What's going on, everybody? David here, back with another video. So today we're going to do a reaction video. We're going to look at Mitch McConnell. He was on the Senate floor yesterday. He unveiled the skinny bill, or the targeted bill. So we're going to take a look at what he said, and then we're going to talk a little bit about this. I talked about the details of the skinny bill. So if you want to know more about that, check the link up here and you can find out more about the skinny bill in its entirety. The only thing I didn't mention yesterday was liability protection. Liability protection is in this bill. And so we'll take a look at what Mitch McConnell says, and I'm going to try not to interrupt. I'll just let it play, and then at the end, then we'll talk about it. I'll let you know what I think about it, and then I will ask you what you think about it. You can post that comment down below. So before we get started, please hit that like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. We do daily videos and live streams on the weekends. All right, let's go ahead and get started with this video.
Madam President.
The Majority Leader.
Our nation has spent the last 6 months fighting the medical, economic, and social effects of this pandemic. The Senate's historic rescue package from back in March, the CARES Act, has gone a long way to help American workers and families endure these incredible challenges. It delivered the extra federal unemployment benefits that help laid-off workers make ends meet. It created the Paycheck Protection Program, which has helped millions of small businesses keep the lights on and keep employees on payroll. It sent resources to the front lines of the healthcare fight, and it invested billions in the race for treatments and for vaccines. But, Madam President, this relief is never going to last forever. Today, enhanced federal unemployment benefits are only still available because of action by President Trump. The Paycheck Protection Program has closed to new applications, and the funds it has delivered are being exhausted. And this last month has brought a whole new challenge: how to get teachers and students safely into a new school year. These are the challenges the people I represent are facing every single day.
All right, so I just want to cut in real quick. Now, you saw how he laid it out when he talked about the CARES Act and how it really worked, and he said it wasn't going to last forever. And now we're in a situation where we need something else, right? But what do? They go to the HEALS Act first, which is half of what the CARES Act was. And then they go to this skinny bill, more targeted bill, which is not even half of what the HEALS Act is. So it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, okay, this worked. The CARES Act worked. So instead of going with something else similar to the CARES Act, which would be about $2 trillion, we're going to go to something half that, the HEALS Act, and then we're not even going to call the HEALS Act to the floor. We're just going to go with something even less than the HEALS Act. So it's pretty crazy. Let's go ahead and get back.
Kentuckians and all Americans know this unprecedented crisis is not through with us yet. And so they expect that Congress isn't through helping yet either. Senate Republicans have been fighting for months to deliver another round of COVID-19 relief. In July, we proposed the HEALS Act, a sweeping package totaling more than $1 trillion that would have led right to bipartisan talks. But Speaker Pelosi and the Democratic leader said no. They said they would block our $1 trillion for kids, jobs, and health care unless we doubled the cost to accommodate an endless wish list of non-COVID related liberal priorities like tax cuts for blue state millionaires. So Republicans tried another way to break the logjam. In August, we proposed narrowing discussions to some of the most urgent, most bipartisan subjects that seemed especially ripe for agreement. But Speaker Pelosi and the Democratic leader blocked that as well. Now they claimed it was too piecemeal, they said, to get any help out the door until Democrats and Republicans had settled every disagreement on every front. The Democratic leaders have spent months playing these Goldilocks games. They've complained about every single thing we've put forward, but they produced nothing of their own with any chance whatsoever of becoming law. Meanwhile, after all their blustering that Congress should never do anything piecemeal, Speaker Pelosi came rushing back to Washington to pass the most piecemeal bill you could possibly imagine. Legislation that solely helped out the U.S. Postal Service and did nothing at all for American families.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's talking about some of this stuff when you look at it. Okay, you could have the Democrats just completely stonewalling, not wanting to do anything. Right. And so and we don't know how the negotiations were going. Mitch McConnell probably doesn't know much either, as far as he was just getting phone conversations. He wasn't actually sitting in the room. But we don't know what they were negotiating and how close they really were when it came down to it. And Nancy Pelosi could have been just, okay, we got this. Okay, we want this. We want this. We want this. She could have been doing that. We'll never know that. But it's just interesting to hear Mitch McConnell kind of lay this all out and say, well, the Democrats have done nothing. The Democrats passed the HEROES Act, and they did send it over to the Senate. And the Senate had ample time to tear it apart, create what they want, and then send it back. But they chose not to do that. They wanted to go it alone, wait for a couple months, and then put out the HEALS Act and then move from there. So it was kind of interesting how he's saying that they didn't want to do anything when they were actually the first ones to act. They acted May 15th. It took the Republicans until July 27th in order to act. And people this whole time have been suffering. And so it's kind of a hard argument to make when it comes down to, oh, they didn't want to do anything. And then when they do something, they do the postal bill. It's a piecemeal bill. And what happened with that, right? The senators aren't even going to address it. So that it's not going to go anywhere. So it's one of those things where you don't want them to do a piecemeal bill, or if they do a piecemeal bill, you don't do anything with it, but you want them to do something with your piecemeal bill. It doesn't make sense. Let's go ahead and get back.
When Republicans tried to help American workers keep their jobs, Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer said it was piecemeal. But when House Democrat fears about mail-in voting made them think maybe their own jobs could be in jeopardy, that argument suddenly disappeared. That's the score, Madam President. Democrats are all for piecemeal bills when they concern their own reelection, but when it comes to bipartisan aid for kids, jobs, and schools, Democrats say it's either their entire wish list, all of it, or nobody gets a dime. Well, Republicans see this quite differently. We don't think this crisis cares about partisan politics. We think people are hurting, and Congress should do its job. We want to agree where bipartisan agreement is possible, get more help out the door, and then keep arguing over the rest later. That's how you legislate. That's how you make law. You find agreement where agreement is possible and keep arguing over the rest later.
All right. So key point there. You find agreement, whatever you agree upon, let's go ahead and vote on that. What you don't agree upon, let's discuss it later. Stimulus checks are not in this skinny bill. And I talked about this before. Mark Meadows, there were a couple of interviews in August where he did not mention the stimulus checks when in his talks, his interviews and stuff like that. He was not mentioning the stimulus checks, because in these interviews, Mark Meadows was saying we agree on certain things, and he was laying out the stuff they agreed on, and he did not say stimulus checks. And this was a couple of times. Some people were saying, well, you know what, maybe they all agree on stimulus checks, so he just didn't even have to mention it. But it's interesting that it's not in this skinny bill, and we kind of had a heads up that it wasn't going to be in there. But I was still thinking it has to be. You have to put stimulus checks in there. How could you not? Everybody is saying they want stimulus checks, and you're not going to put it in there? That just doesn't make any sense. But the only thing that I can think of is they didn't agree on something. So maybe it was the amount. It was $1,200 stimulus checks for individuals, and then $1,200 per dependent. They didn't agree on that. Maybe they wanted the $500 per dependent, not $1,200 per dependent. I don't know, but something about the stimulus checks is not what they want, or they would have added it. I can't see that why they didn't. So let's go ahead and continue.
So Republicans are making yet another overture. Today, we're releasing a targeted proposal that focuses on several of the most urgent aspects of this crisis. issues where bipartisanship should be especially possible. I'm talking about policies like extending the additional federal unemployment benefit for jobless workers, providing a second round of job-saving Paycheck Protection Program for the hardest-hit small businesses to prevent layoffs, sending more than $100 billion to help K-12 schools and universities reopen safely and educate our kids, dedicating billions more for testing, contact tracing, treatments, and vaccines, onshoring manufacturing capacity for critical medical supplies, and rebuilding our national stockpile, giving all kinds of families more choice and flexibility to navigate education and childcare during the crisis, providing legal protections for schools, churches, charities, nonprofits, and employers so they can reopen, providing more help for the Postal Service. Our proposal would do all this and more. Now, here's what our bill is not. It's not a sweeping, multi-trillion-dollar plan to rebuild the entire country in Republicans' image. It does not even contain every single relief policy that Republicans ourselves think would help in the short term. I'm confident the Democrats would feel the same way. But the American people don't need us to keep arguing over what might be perfect. They need us to actually make a law. So Democratic leaders are perfectly free to come out here and keep up their playbook from these past months. Just blast away in bad faith, call names, and complain about the infinite number of things this proposal does not do. Maybe they'll bring back their Goldilocks Act and say our multi-$100 billion proposal is too small or too skinny, even though Democrats just passed a piecemeal bill for the Postal Service that ignored everything else. A piecemeal bill for the Postal Service that ignored everything else. Democrats can do all that if they want to, Madam President. I understand they have already been criticizing this bill today before they'd even read it, before it had even been put out. More of this would just reinforce that only one side of the aisle seems to want any bipartisan outcome at all. It's easy to tell in Washington whether somebody's end goal is political posturing or getting an outcome. One way or another, what Democrats do will be revealing. The Senate's going to vote on this targeted proposal. We're going to get the stonewalling of Democratic leaders out from behind closed doors and put this to a vote out here on the floor. And it's going to happen this week. Senators will not be voting on whether this targeted package satisfies every one of their legislative hopes and dreams. That's not what we will do in this chamber. We vote on whether to make laws, whether to forge a compromise, whether to do a lot of good for the country, and keep arguing over the remaining differences later. A few weeks ago, Madam President, more than 100 House Democrats spoke out publicly. They asked Speaker Pelosi to stop stonewalling and let the House vote on targeted COVID relief short of her entire wish list.
No, that's true. There were a lot of Democrats that came out in the House saying, hey, we need to get something done. And they're all running for re-election. So this is one of those things where they have to be in a situation where they can say that they're doing something. So you do have Democrats in the House that are upset with the fact that that nothing's getting done. And I think most politicians are probably pretty upset with this whole situation where nothing's getting done. But do they want to do something so bad that they're going to approve a bill that doesn't have stimulus checks in it? I don't think so. It doesn't have a lot of the things that they were asking for. I don't think so. So it's one of those deals where, yes, if you made a better bill, then maybe you would have had a chance. And I'm talking about this targeted bill. But Yeah, he is right that you do have Democrats and Republicans that are looking at their poll numbers, and they're looking at this election and thinking, hey, we have to get something done. And so we need to vote on something. And you have Republicans in the Senate right now that are in that situation. You have some Republicans who are running for re-election, like 23 Republicans, and they're looking at it and they're saying, hey, we have to at least vote on something. We haven't voted on anything yet. So we have to do something. And so that was part of the reason why they said, okay, let's get this more targeted bill out there and see if we can approve that, and it'll show that we're doing something. So let's go ahead and continue.
The Speaker ignored them, ignored her rank and file, just like her piecemeal postal bill ignored American families. Over here, I'll make sure our Democratic colleagues get a chance to walk the walk. Every senator who has said they want a bipartisan outcome for the country will have a chance to vote for everyone to see. Senators will vote this week, and the American people will be watching.
All right, so that was it. Now, it's interesting. He's saying that he's calling it to the floor. I didn't know if he was going to do this, but yes, he's going to bring it to the floor, so they are going to vote on it. And it's one of those deals. There's no stimulus check in it. And so the Democrats have a couple of different strategies they can work now, because the Republicans have already shown their hand. They've shown that, okay, yes, we favor PPP money over stimulus checks for the people. And so I know there were a lot of people talking. The president, yes, he wants stimulus checks, and Mitch McConnell said he wants stimulus checks, and everyone's saying they want stimulus checks, right? But when it comes down to it, when they create a bill without stimulus checks. So you have the HEALS Act that does have stimulus checks. Are they calling that to the floor? No, they're not calling that to the floor because they're not getting support from the Republican senators. So they can't pass that. There's no chance to pass that. But now they have this more targeted bill without stimulus checks. And guess what? He's going to bring that to the floor. So he probably has some pretty good numbers. Now, I don't know if he has the numbers that he needs. You have 53 Republican senators right now. All they need is 51 in order for it to pass. You need 60 for a filibuster-proof bill, but you don't even really. I can't see Democrats stepping in front of this and trying to debate it, trying to filibuster it. Because if I were a Democrat and I was in the Senate, I would just let it go, because you've already shown the people that you're not willing to approve stimulus checks, right? So let this targeted bill go to the House. Let them approve it in the Senate. Let them all go on record. Let all those senators go on record saying that they are not approving stimulus checks for the American people. Send that over to the House, and guess what? That's when you add all that stuff. You add it all in the House, and you could even go this far, because you have more flexibility. The Democrats have more flexibility in this situation because they can look at it and say, okay, you know what? I don't want this. I don't want that. Stimulus checks, $1,200. No, you know what? Let's make it $2,000. So they can make it even more and then send it back to the Senate, because the Senate will have to get it again for final approval. And guess what? Senators are not going to say no to a stimulus check then, because they went on record saying that they didn't want it first off. Now, if they don't vote on this one or they turn it down in the Senate, that is just political suicide. Now that you have stimulus checks in front of you and you're going to turn that down, it's not going to work. And at that point, then you'll have some Democrats in the Senate that can support it and get it passed. So that's, the Republicans have really shown their hand. And I do not understand why they wouldn't have gone with stimulus checks over PPP money and then negotiated PPP money into it. I don't know why they would show the people that they're not willing to give them stimulus checks. This is something that was very popular with everybody, pretty much. Everyone who received a stimulus check was happy about receiving a stimulus check, right? Why not have that in this skinny bill, this more targeted bill, and then negotiate some of the other stuff instead of not putting it in there? Because now you're showing everyone that you could care less as far as them getting another stimulus check after you said that you wanted them to have stimulus checks. I don't know how the president is not saying anything, and I'm hoping that we hear something in the future from the White House, because the president, that was a promise, right? Yes, more stimulus checks. It's going to be larger than what the Democrats want. There's no more time for negotiating. So if they're going to say, well, we're going to wait 30 days and then we'll negotiate at that time, that's not going to happen. We all know that's not going to happen. And even if they did negotiate, let's say mid-October, you negotiate and you get stimulus checks signed off. Well, people aren't going to receive those stimulus checks before the election. And some of those people would have already voted because of absentee. And so it's just a bad strategy. If that's the way that they want to go about it, it's a bad strategy. And I know people are saying, well, they're just leaving, the Republicans are just leaving this open so the Democrats can add stimulus checks. Why allow them to add stimulus checks when you can do it? If you're already going to approve it, you might as well put it in there now, because now you're showing people that you're not for them when it comes to stimulus checks. You're for business, but you're not for the people. I want to know what you guys think, so please let me know down below. I have a question for you, and here is the question. Should the Senate pass this bill as is? So should they pass it the way it is, or should they make some changes, maybe add a stimulus check or two, at least add a stimulus check, start with one, add a stimulus check, and then send it over to the House? Let me know down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And one more thing, I will be putting out another video. Chuck Schumer, he also was on the floor, the Senate floor, and so I'll be putting out his video at probably noon today. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.